A joint 109-truck UN convoy carrying food supplies to people in Gaza was violently looted on 16th November. The vast majority of the trucks, 97 in total, were lost and drivers were forced at gunpoint to unload aid. How are they lost if you know that the drivers were forced at gunpoint? It seems like they were looted, like you said, not lost. But they continue. The Israeli authorities continue to disregard their legal obligations under international law to ensure the population's basic needs are met and to facilitate the safe delivery of aid. Israel's obligation is to facilitate aid into Gaza, which it does. We'll cover the numbers later in this video. But when 109 trucks of aid are checked, facilitated, and then hijacked by Palestinians, it's still Israel's fault? Well, let's dive in. Here's the situation. 97 aid trucks were violently looted after entering Gaza. The UNRWA and World Food Program were in charge of these trucks and their distribution. Now they're asking the IDF to help prevent further looting and secure convoys, something Israel has already been doing by opening new routes to help the people who desperately need the aid. Meanwhile, Hamas has reportedly started a hunt and have executed 20 Gazans involved in the looting. What does the UN have to say?
Yesterday, you said you don't know, or at least you have no capacity to really asking who are those looters. But yesterday, the ambassador of Israel, Mr. Danun, clearly said it's Hamas. How did they know?
The Israelis are on the ground. Obviously, we are on the ground. I can only report what our colleagues are telling us.
Who are your colleagues on the ground exactly?
But don't you share information on that?
We have the information we have. We know what happened.
If you know what happened, why the hesitation? Why not just say who did it? Well, luckily the subject came up again the next day.
So far you don't know who looted those.
As again, you know, when people, armed people, try to take control of a vehicle and goods, we're not asking questions and they're not wearing insignias.
Do you know how many of those? Because we're talking about 98 trucks.
I do not have that kind of granular detail right now.
So no questions asked when the largest hijacking of aid in this conflict occurs? Interesting. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department's Matt Miller said this about the looting.
Incredibly desperate people who need access to this food, and anyone who is stealing or diverting humanitarian assistance for their own profit, for their own gain, is quite obviously harming their own people, and they should stop immediately.
Closer to the answer now. Who are these own people? Gazans. Who governs Gaza? Hamas. And then the key quote.
Ultimately, you are not going to finally solve this problem without an end to the war and the establishment of a new governance and security authority inside Gaza.
So if Gaza's government is the problem, why is it Israel's responsibility to not only provide and facilitate aid, but also secure its distribution? Isn't that UNRWA's job, the so-called irreplaceable organization? Or is UNRWA just enabling Hamas to misuse the aid for profit?
A contradiction here, because on the one hand, you're saying Israel is responsible for the security of humanitarian delivery in Gaza, and the other hand, the UN will not accept IDF-provided security to these convoys. So I'm not sure how you reconcile that.
I think we reconcile it by trying to find a way to keep our people and the community as safe as possible.
How are you trying to keep your people and the community safe? By ignoring the perpetrators and avoiding accountability? Or is just pointing the finger at Israel for everything and anything your go-to solution? Looting aid trucks isn't new. Hamas has been hijacking aid since the start of the war, sometimes even by sending armed terrorists to seize it directly. Gazans themselves have been complaining about these thefts for a year.
الوضع صعب لا تدخل مساعدات.
ما في المساعدات كلها نازله تحت. المساعدات ما بيجوا للامه ولا بيجي للشعب كله. احنا جايين من غزه وكل الدعم بيجي لنا. انا بحكي ما بخافش منهم. انا بحكي لهم كمان. انا كل الدعم بيجي لقطاع غزه.
بس حج كتير بيوصل اللي بيوصل إشي قليل وبيتوزع هيك بيحكوا.
كله للبيوت إلهم. خليهم ياخدون ولا يطخون ولا يعملوا اللي بدهم إياه حماس.
And have attacked aid trucks coming from Egypt from the beginning of the war to prevent Hamas from getting to them first.
يا جماعة ما حدش يخش جوه. الفلسطينيين ما خلوش ولا عربية اللي هم كسروها. وزي ما انتم شايفين كده العربيات اتكسرت ما عادش نافعة. طوب من جوه خرم الظهرية وده دم السواق. زي ما انتم شايفين الكابينة ما عادش نافعة.
شوف بدلوا العربية آخر بهدلة ازاي؟ والسواق جاي مضروب ومتبهدل. اتفضل. هذا الناس بتوع غزة يا سيدي. اللي احنا بنقول ربنا يكون في عونهم. لا.
Now that Hamas's military grip is not as strong as it was before, many Gazans have gone on protest to the streets to complain about the rising food prices. This man is screaming, "Show me where there are warehouses and I will break into them. I will break into any warehouse there is." If the food and aid is entering Gaza for free, why are the food prices rising? Because if we're speaking about amounts of aid, there is enough aid entering the border and going through the security checkpoints. There is aid coming in from aerial routes, maritime routes, and land crossings. A new one in Kisufim just opened this November. A total of 1.13 million tons of aid have entered Gaza since the start of the war. 893,000 of which were food. That's 70,000 tons monthly or 2.3 million kilos of food per day for 2 million people. That's more than 1 kilo per person daily, yet people are starving? Water is being pumped through 3 water pipelines from Israel, 2 from Egypt, and more pumping facilities. Yes, similar to those pipelines Hamas was bragging about ripping out from the earth to make rockets out of. Same ones. Weapons and ammunition are often found in the aid trucks, which is why thorough checks by the IDF and Koget are necessary. So, if there's enough aid coming in, why are people still suffering from hunger? Why are some risking their lives to steal aid from trucks? And why are most of the pictures of starving children actually showing children with brain palsy? I mean, everybody around them is obviously not starving, so they're either bad parents or they're lying. The first problem is pickup and distribution process. After the aid passes security checks and enters Gaza, it often just sits idle for prolonged periods of time. UNRWA frequently delays picking up and distributing the supplies. As a result, food and medicine spoil, becoming infested with bugs and vermin. The second problem is Hamas hijacking the aid once UNRWA does pick it up. Armed men seize the trucks and redirect the supplies to Hamas-controlled infrastructure. They prioritize their own members, and the rest is sold for profit to Gazans, creating a severe inflation in food and equipment prices, resources that should have been distributed for free. These two issues basically mean that the everyday people of Gaza cannot access the aid provided by countless countries and organizations, despite the risk taken to deliver it. Civilians are left desperate and often resort to violent means to survive. These issues are compounded by the brutal enforcement tactics used by Hamas to maintain control. There is extensive footage showing Hamas members severely punishing Gazan civilians who attempt to access aid directly. People have been beaten up, injured, and even executed for trying to take food or supplies meant for the population. This creates an atmosphere of fear, further preventing ordinary Gazans from getting the aid they desperately need. To summarize, the amount of food, water, medicine, and aid entering Gaza is theoretically sufficient to sustain the population. However, Hamas's violent hijacking and profiteering combined with UNRWA's negligence in timely distribution prevent this aid from reaching those in need. UNRWA's inaction not only makes it irrelevant, but even harmful to the people it's supposed to help. This creates a snowball effect, leaving desperate civilians to take matters into their own hands, often with tragic consequences. Meanwhile, the UN openly avoids cooperating with Israel and denies responsibility for Gaza's own governing body, Hamas, yet they place the responsibility for aid security on Israel. Got it. I'm Israel Chai. Yeah.